Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, May 11th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-gyan. U.S. regulators have expanded approval for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine to people aged 12 to 15, making Pfizer's vaccine the first in the U.S. to be authorized for younger teens and adolescents. Palestinian militants fired rockets towards Jerusalem as well as South Israel as Tel Aviv celebrated Jerusalem Day. Israel responded to the rockets with airstrikes. And South Korea's exports soared 81.2% on year in the first 10 days of May on the back of robust shipments of cars and semiconductors. Our top story today, U.S. regulators have expanded approval for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine for people aged 12 to 15. The FDA expanded emergency authorization after reviewing clinical data, which showed the vaccine's efficacy to be 100% and that is well tolerated. The decision makes Pfizer's vaccine the first in the U.S. to be authorized for younger teens and adolescents. The vaccine had previously been authorized for people aged 16 or older. Pfizer is also planning to seek approval for children between 2 and 11 years old in September. Its vaccine safety and efficacy study in children ages 6 months to 11 years old is ongoing. Recent data from the UK shows both AstraZeneca's and Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine reduced the risk of death from the disease by up to 80% after the first dose. The figure rises to 97% for Pfizer's vaccine after the second dose. This is based on findings by Public Health England, who analyzed new COVID-19 cases and people by vaccination status who died within 28 days after testing positive. The study is the first real-world data on COVID-19 vaccine protection against mortality. Starting next week, the government will help cover medical expenses for those who suffer severe reactions to COVID-19 vaccinations. Meanwhile, the first of 3 expert panels here in South Korea gave its recommendation for the government to grant approval for the Moderna vaccine based on the results of the U.S. Phase 3 trial. Chang Tae-hyun brings us the updates.
Severely ill patients who show adverse reactions after getting a COVID-19 vaccine but can't get compensated due to the lack of causal link can now get support for their medical bills. South Korea's COVID-19 Vaccination Management Task Force announced on Monday that they'll be temporarily helping out patients from Monday next week.
The amount of the support will be up to 10 million won, or roughly $9,000 per person, and covers medical expenses for diseases that occurred following the COVID-19 vaccination. This support project will be implemented from May 17th after a preparation period such as training local government officials. The support will also be applied retroactively to those who were vaccinated before the project's implementation.
People who have received a shot or their guardian can visit the community health center to apply for the support. But if there's another reason for the adverse reaction, then they can't get the support. Meanwhile, South Korea on Monday began accepting COVID-19 vaccine reservations for the next group of senior citizens, those between the ages of 65 and 69. This is the second of the 3-stage reservation program, which covers people between 60 and 74 who will be getting the AstraZeneca vaccine. The actual inoculations will take place from May 27th to mid-June. And as the vaccination process is ongoing, the country has announced its preliminary review of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine, which largely backed its approval. The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety on Sunday held its first consultative meeting with an independent advisory panel, which confirmed the vaccine provides 94.1% protection against COVID-19 and forms strong antibodies 2 weeks after the second dose. This is the first of 3 review stages that the vaccine has to clear before it's approved. Chang Tae-hyun, Arirang News.
Now the latest on the coronavirus situation in South Korea. The nation reported 511 new cases on Tuesday, climbing back above the 500 mark after falling into the 400s the previous day. Of the new cases, 483 were local and 28 were from overseas. 4 more people have died, bringing the death toll to 1,879. On the vaccination front, a total of nearly 3.7 million people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine as of this morning. Amid continuing debate on whether the Tokyo Olympics should push through, the leader of Japan's main opposition party says there's no possible way to safely hold the Games. Lee Seung-jae has more.
With the Tokyo Olympics just several weeks away, the leader of Japan's main opposition party is questioning Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga's assurances that the Games can be held safely. Yukio Edano, head of the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, said Monday that it's impossible to protect the lives, health, and livelihoods of the Japanese people while holding a global sporting event. Edano said it would be unacceptable if the Games lead to new COVID-19 variants being brought in from overseas. He also slammed the government for prematurely lifting the previous state of emergency in late March, saying it caused the number of virus cases to rebound quickly. Asked during a parliamentary committee meeting whether the Olympics will go on even if COVID-19 infections continue to spike in Japan, Suga insisted he has never put the Olympics ahead of the Japanese public.
I've never put the Olympics first. My priority has been to protect the lives and health of the Japanese population. Let me address that clearly. In terms of the Olympic and Paralympic Games, it is important that we must first prevent the spread of the virus.
Japan on Monday reported 4,937 new COVID-19 cases, despite fewer tests being done over the weekend. That's the highest number of cases reported in Japan on a Monday since the start of the pandemic. The country also reported a record 1,152 critically ill patients. However, the IOC, the organizers of the Tokyo Olympics, and the Prime Minister himself continue to insist the Games will go on in a safe and secure way. However, a recent opinion poll by the Japanese daily The Yomiuri Shimbun showed nearly 60% of the Japanese public wanted the Games to be called off. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
It may be time to ease the federal guidance on wearing face masks indoors in the U.S. Now, that's according to Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who told ABC News that this could be the case as more people get vaccinated. The CDC last month relaxed guidance on wearing masks outdoors, but advises people to wear masks in indoor public spaces even if they've received their shots. Over the Atlantic, Britain will lift face mask requirements for secondary school students from next Monday. This comes as the UK confirmed it was relaxing lockdown measures. The World Health Organization has classified the COVID-19 variant first identified in India as a variant of global concern, with preliminary studies showing it spreads more easily than other strains. It becomes the fourth variant to be marked a global concern and requires heightened tracking and analysis, joining the UK, South African, and Brazilian variants. The WHO says the variant was first identified in India in December, although an earlier version was spotted in October 2020. Israeli-Palestinian tensions have spiraled into violence, leading to rockets being fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel on Monday as Tel Aviv celebrated Jerusalem Day. Israel responded with airstrikes. Our Kim Hyo-sun has the details.
The ongoing clashes between Israel and Palestine are spiraling into a border conflict, with Palestinian militants along the Gaza Strip on Monday firing rockets toward Jerusalem as well as southern Israel. The rockets were fired shortly after a deadline issued by Gaza's Islamist rulers, Hamas, for Israel to withdraw its forces following continued clashes. Israel responded to the rockets with airstrikes. Gaza's health ministry says 9 Palestinians, including 3 children, were killed in northern Gaza. Israel's prime minister warned that such attacks will never be tolerated.
This evening, on Jerusalem Day, the terrorist organizations in Gaza have crossed a red line and attacked us with missiles in the outskirts of Jerusalem. Israel will respond with great force. We will not tolerate attacks on our territory, on our capital, on our citizens, and on our soldiers. Whoever attacks us will pay a heavy price.
As Israel celebrated Jerusalem Day on Monday, marking its capture of eastern sections of the Holy City in the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, violence continued at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest site. Israeli police fired rubber bullets, stun grenades, and tear gas at Palestinian protesters who responded by throwing stones. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said more than 300 Palestinians were injured. East Jerusalem is the heart of the Israel-Palestinian conflict, with both sides claiming rights over the area. The international community, including the U.S. and European nations, have expressed concerns and are appealing for calm. Kim Hye-san, Arirang News.
And over in Myanmar, when Aung San Suu Kyi was deposed in February, it triggered a mass uprising of daily protests. Bloody crackdowns by the junta as well as economic turmoil followed. Our Choi Won-jung takes a look back and tells us what may lie ahead for Myanmar.
Demonstrators in Myanmar hold up three fingers as a symbol of unity, and pro-democracy chants fill the streets. And since the military coup 100 days ago, hundreds of people have been brutally killed on these streets and some in their homes. Protesters have organized armed groups they call People's Defense Forces to protect civilians from the military. But since the coup, the nation's economy has been in freefall. The World Bank predicts that Myanmar's GDP will backtrack 10% this year. In that regard, the military's internet restrictions have been no help. A former UN official noting the damage done says nearly 13% of the companies in Myanmar have stopped doing business entirely.
Political instability had a stronger negative impact on families in just 2 months than a whole year of the pandemic.
International sanctions led by the EU and the US have stepped up pressure on the junta. The leaders from ASEAN held summit on the Myanmar crisis last month. The 5-point statement they issued, calling for an end to the violence, yielded no commitment from the coup leaders. But some say this was a tentative starting point.
The international community must act now to prevent this from happening. The world must recognize the historic and inter-ethnic government of national unity as the only legitimate government, while pressuring the military with sanctions, an arms embargo, and a push for justice.
Above all, she said this means never giving recognition to junta through international organizations like the UN. An activist from Burma speaking anonymously said that coup will eventually lead to civil war.
More people are believing that civil war is eventually the only option left. Civil war is indeed not the choice of the Burmese people, but that's what the military regime wants it to look like.
Since the coup, more than 3,800 people have been arrested, charged, or sentenced, and more than 780 people have been killed, including children as young as 6. Choi Won-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports during the first 10 days of May soared by more than 80% on year. Preliminary data from the Korea Customs Service Tuesday showed exports from May 1st to the 10th came to nearly $12.5 billion. Even when the number of working days is taken into account, average day exports were up about 65% on year. Shipments of automobiles jumped some 360% and automobile parts by 317%. Exports of petroleum products rose roughly 130% and semiconductors by around 52% on year. The economic crisis caused by the pandemic has dealt the biggest blow to South Korea's self-employed and to small businesses. The Bank of Korea admits that it has widened the income gap. President Moon also addressed this on Monday, saying those suffering the most in that group will get additional support. Our Peunji reports.
The economic impact of the coronavirus hasn't fallen on everybody equally. Certain groups like the self-employed and those on low incomes have suffered more than others. This used to be one of the busiest streets in Seoul before the pandemic struck. But now, as you can see behind me, business is quiet and a lot of the shops have closed. A woman who runs a flower shop in this area near Ewha Women's University says so many shops have shut down this past year that she can't even name them all.
I opened my shop on December 14th, 2019, and the pandemic struck about 2 weeks later. All the shops were open then. But in the space of a year, around 30 shops have closed. 30 shops, just around my flower shop right here. Running a business here has been really, really tough.
The Bank of Korea says this has caused the gap between the rich and the poor to widen. According to a report by the central bank on Monday, the income of households in the bottom 20% income bracket fell by more than 17%, whereas the top 20% only saw a decrease of 1.5%. It said this is largely due to the large numbers of self-employed and working mothers in this income group, adding that the self-employed have seen their income fall by almost 30% since the outbreak. President Moon addressed the growing inequality in a speech on Monday.
코로나 자체로 인한 직간접적 피해도 매우 크지만 코로나로 촉발된 사회 경제의 변화 속에서 성자가 되는 업종과 기업이 있는 반면 밀려나는 업종과 기업이 있습니다. 코로나로 큰 타격을 받은 업종과 소상공인, 자영업자 등의 어려움을 덜어드리기 위해 계속 노력하겠습니다.
He added that the government will ensure an employment safety net that will increase the number of those eligible for employment insurance and provide a better employment support program. 배은지, Arirang News.
Introducing projects underway as part of the inclusive Green Partnership for the upcoming P4G Summit on climate change, representatives from the private sector and government officials held a forum on Monday in Seoul. They discussed 5 key points, including restoring forests in Ethiopia, introducing water leakage management systems, and commercializing zero-carbon ships. The P4G Summit is officially known as Partnering for Green Growth and the Global Goals 2030. It will be held on May 30th and 31st in Seoul. South Korea has designated the week before the summit as Green Future Week. Understanding history involves a careful analysis of artifacts from the past. South Korea has recently opened a new center where a detailed study of excavated items can be carried out under one roof. Our Kim Bo-kyung introduces to us the Culture Heritage Analysis Information Center.
Analyzing cultural heritage for its conservation is as important as appreciating its beauty. The National Research Institute of Cultural Heritage has recently opened its Cultural Heritage Analysis Information Center to research the daily lives of ancient people and unlock the secrets of history.
Before the center opened, all the data and samples were scattered at places that only the experts in charge would know. But now, with all the research assembled in one center, we can store the samples and collect the data systematically.
Skeletons found at excavation sites are examined here. Through collagen and protein from bone powder, experts can find out what the deceased ate at the time, and through their DNA, the age, gender, and height can be figured out. Researchers also study inorganic substances to see where cultural assets materials are from, and use a type of infrared light to look thoroughly into Buddhist paintings.
One of the most valuable pieces of equipment that the center will have is the accelerator mass spectroscopy machine. Only the tools for pre-treatment are ready now, but when the AMS arrives this August, it will enable carbon dating of cultural heritage items.
Though determining the dating of the cultural heritage is the most basic work, we have been asking other companies or organizations abroad to do that part. With the AMS, now we can independently figure out the radiocarbon dating of assets such as bones, paper, and textiles.
Through this newly built center, the experts are hoping that systematically managing the data of cultural heritage analysis through a central platform will give us new insights about Korea's cultural assets. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News, Daejeon.
Good morning. Upper parts of the country will have early summer weather with lots of sunshine. So the highs will be hitting 27 degrees here in Seoul and in Chuncheon. But Jeju will have a wet day today. And after the rain lets up in the southern regions this afternoon, there will be some sunshine with warmer highs today. So rain continues in the south throughout this morning, while Jeju will actually start to see rain from the afternoon along with strong gusts through early tomorrow. So those of you on Jeju will need rain gear today, while central regions will actually need sun protection items as we'll have very high UV levels today. Then air quality will be good to normal nationwide. The unseasonably warm weather continues through Saturday with highs nearing 30 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Then rain on Sunday will put the brakes on the unseasonably hot temperatures. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.